We have dynamic and static analysis. We've got a few others now as well. Static software testing is often called, means it's not running. So we have slides coming up on all this stuff. It means it's not running. Source code review, things like that. Looking at the EXE, like analyzing the EXE itself without actually running it, that's static. Dynamic means it's running. Interactive and OAS as well, other forms down here. We have a slide on this, out of band. So we have interactive and out of band, and we have a note on this. You actually modify the app, and that's Burp's Infiltrator does that. So it's related to dynamic, but you actually modify the app. And then Infiltrator can then see much more deeply where the flaws would be. And out of band is Burp Collaborator. That's a way, like, you're doing blind injection and you have it do an NS lookup and you're watching the web server, the DNS server in this case, right? So you have a kickoff, you're doing blind injection, meaning I'm not seeing any results on my screen, but you're doing command injection, it's working, but I can't see any results. We'll cover all this in detail. So how do I know my command's running if I'm not seeing any results? I could ping myself, for example. I could do an NS lookup against a domain I control and watch the server to see that thing coming in. Burp Collaborator does exactly that. Those are two other forms of pen testing. So black box, as the name implies, I can't look in. Zero knowledge, another term for that, right? White box means I can look in, I can see the code. So if I do a white box test, a full knowledge test, I could ask for database schema, I could ask for source code, all that kind of stuff, right? Some pen testers, especially more junior ones, think that white box testing is cheating somehow. It's not cheating. Like, if you want me to test the web app, give me an account. And some junior pen testers are like, no, Eric, you have to hack the account. I'm like, well, I can go to eBay and create an account. I can go to Amazon and create an account. I can go to all these sites and create accounts, Instagram. So it's perfectly valid to have them give me an account or let me set up an account for myself. That's the whole web's full of stuff like that, right? I don't have to necessarily hack an account. Now, maybe that's part of the goal. Maybe the goal is to break into an account, do username harvesting, password guessing. We'll do all this stuff this week. But maybe that's not the goal. Maybe the goal is the code secure? If the question is the code secure, give me a testing account. Just like I can get one on Amazon or eBay or Instagram or anywhere. Well, not anywhere, but many places, right? Gray box is a combination. I prefer a white box. I simply move faster. And if I move faster, I'm getting more value for my clients, right? If I have 80 hours for pen tests and I can shave 20 hours because you give me the knowledge I need, that's 20 more hours of hacking I can do for you, right? That's 20 more hours of value. Most of my pen tests, the max is usually about 4 weeks. So I've got between 2 to 4 weeks typically on a pen test. Every hour I save, if you give me inside info, is an hour I'm moving faster for you. And clients often engage in kind of misguided thinking here. Well, Eric, the attacker's always blind. That is not true. The attacker's not always blind. They could have hacked your employees at home. I can't do that. They could have hacked companies you do business with. I can't do that. They could have hacked your employees in the hotel on the open Wi-Fi they're sitting on. I can't do that. The idea that a pen tester simulates a black hat is completely incorrect. I am limited by scope. I am limited by time. I am limited by ethics and morals and laws, right? And a nation state isn't limited by any of those things, right? So I have to obey your scope. The nation state won't. I can't spend three years hacking you. The nation state can. If you're that important, they can. They will, right? So anything that helps me move faster is benefit to my client. So I prefer white box. Static application security testing. It's an automated approach. You need access to source code, may overlook APIs, maybe they're calling libraries that aren't included with the thing you're analyzing, etc. Dynamic is the thing's running. We'll do a lot of dynamic this week using tools like Burp Suite. You actually, we'll go through an interception proxy, as we'll discuss today and use all week long. We'll analyze the code coming in and out, the HTML, etc. And various forms of testing are more applicable to various forms of flaws, types of flaws rather, right? But we'll spend a lot of time on dynamic this week. DAS tends to be, again, the skill and experience of the pen tester. Much more important here, right? The weight is much more on the pen tester's shoulders, right? And it takes years and years to get good at this stuff. Malcolm Gladwell had a famous quote, you want to be an expert in anything, 10,000 hours. It's just that simple, 10,000 hours, So you want to be an expert in the French Renaissance, 10,000 hours. Free throws, 10,000 hours. Learning Spanish, 10,000 hours. Learning a foreign language, let's say. It's just that simple, folks, 10,000 hours, right? And there's a lot of truth to that. And so 10,000 hours is 5 staff years of full-time work. It's a lot of time, right? And so it takes years to get good at this. And a 23-year-old kid won't be that good, because I was 23 years old a long time ago, and I wasn't that good. You know, I'm better now, right? So everyone was a noob once, right? But if you're trying to hire kids to do pen tests and you want them to travel 80% of the time, you tend to get junior staff. It's just natural, right? And so, again, other forms of pen testing, they can hide behind their tools. You can't hide here, right? You just can't. You have to be good, right? And that just takes time. A lot of tools out here. I love Zap. Even though we got Burp Pro now, we still use Zap for many labs because Zap is really, really powerful. Burp adds some cool features like Collaborator and Infiltrator, but Zap as a core interception proxy. So you proxy to Zap or Burp, it proxies to the app, it sees everything in between. We're going to use these tools all week long. And Zap, as a version 2.4, they made a major update version 2.4. It's version 2.8 now, I think. And the fuzzer got really, really good, like commercial grade fuzzing. Burp adds a whole bunch of features like the out-of-band testing. You want to inject an NSLOOKUP and see if anything tries to resolve that name. Burp Collaborator will do that for you automatically. Those kind of value-add features Burp has, Burp Pro. Zap doesn't, but Zap is a really solid fuzzer. And the thing I can do with Zap that I can't do with Burp Pro, I can give it to my client. I can say, here. I can sit down, I can do some purple teaming, right? Purple teaming is the mix of red and blue, of course. Red being the pen test, the attackers, blue being the defenders. And it's been a big movement in the industry now. I've been doing it for years of purple teaming. Me coming in and doing a shock and awe campaign and lighting everything up and handing off a report and leaving, how effective is that? Not very, as far as fixing stuff, making things better, right? How effective is that? I feel good, my ego's boosted, but it's a year later, are they any better? Often not. So I always try to manage, have at least a day or two on the back end of a pen tester, sit down with the application developers and say, here's what I did. Here's your code. Here's Burp, here's Zap. I can give you Zap. I've actually given many of my clients the Security 542 VM. I said, here, I'm going to actually rerun my pen test with the developer whose code I just own sitting next to me. I'm going to actually launch the commands with the developer sitting next to me, literally side by side. Then I have he or she launch the same commands. And now they're seeing the matrix. So they're seeing the other side. They're like, they view it from the code side. Now they're seeing it from the other side. Like, I see the light bulbs turning on, right? Like, wow, I didn't know it was possible. It's amazing. I'm like, and you can keep Zap. Zap's yours. Now, Burp, you have to pay for it, but Zap is yours, right? So I can hand these things off to my clients. So we all love Burp Suite. Burp Suite is usually the first tool a pen tester pays for, right? That's often the first tool we pay for. You get a 4-month license in here, I'm pumped. But Zap is fantastic too. And Burp is very affordable. It's a few $100, $300 and something. Some methodologies now. Various methodologies. Now, we also move differently. So the history of this class, Seth and I took over about 3 or 4 years ago. Kevin Johnson was the original author. He left SANS, so we took over the class, thanks to Kevin, and thank you, Kevin. And it used to follow a server-side flow. And the server-side flow is first you do open source intelligence reconnaissance, right? Then you identify IP addresses and things like that, and domain names and things like that. Then you do some ping sweeps and network enumeration to find out where the live hosts are. Then you do port scans to find out what services are listening. Then you do version detection to find out what version of SQL is running and what version of Apache is running. Then you do vulnerability assessment of those versions. Then you launch exploits. It's a very logical flow to server-side exploitation, right? It's a very logical 1, 2, 3, 4. If you take 560, it's laid out exactly that way. Then you do post-exploitation at the end. So it's a very logical flow, and web app pen testing does not work that way at all. Like, I'll sit down at a web form, and I see this form, and it's designed to say, like, Dent, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy theme, by the way. And then I immediately do this, and I see the error, I know it's MySQL, then I immediately do this, and the whole database dumps. So I went from detection, to exploitation in like 5 seconds, right? It's not like I did detection on day 1 and circled back on day 3. That's not how it works. You go right for the jugular. You go right for the kill. You immediately go in, right? And so it could be 5 seconds before I dump the whole database. Now, why that happened, I'll talk about why that happened on day 3 in detail, okay? Why that all worked. We'll cover all that. We have a lab on that. This is the lab you're looking at, right? So you go right for the kill, right? So I could go from detection to exploitation to data exfiltration in 5 seconds, right? Literally, and I've done that, right? So hyper sped up. We don't like discovery day 1, exploitation day 3. It's not how it works. So the class used to follow that format. We'll do reconnaissance day 1. Like you would have literally done this on day 1. Okay, we know it's vulnerable. On day 3, we'll come back. No, I want right now. Get that thing now, right? So we move. It's more fluid. It's more dynamic, right? And so we go right for the kill. So we move fast. We follow OWASP methodology, but we're not slavishly so. We overall follow the OWASP pen testing guide format. OWASP testing guide, the OTG, but we make considerations for pacing and speed and time and labs and whatnot, right? They update it about every 3 years, and last updated in 2017. That is the current version, 2017. The course has been updated for 2017. We added some new stuff, a brand new XXE lab, which we're very excited about, right? So they combined a few things. They added a few things like XXE. They got feedback from companies like Veracode. So Veracode, Chris Weissapal's company, he used to be with the Loft and At Stake, the Rockstar hackers, Mudge and that whole crew out of Boston, right? He came out of them and he formed a company called Veracode, him and a few of the Loft people. And they contacted OWASP, like, well, so they do code testing, dynamic and static code testing, right? And they said, well, our testing showing that some of the serious flaws on the web are not in the top 10, XXE being one of them. So they reorder it every few years based on current trends and whatnot, combine things, et cetera. They do fine work. And your developers should be reading OWASP materials. Your devs, your developers should be reading OWASP. They should be following OWASP. They should know OWASP. They should be, that should be one of their Bibles for your developers, right? So the OWASP testing guide is how to perform web app pen testing. We have a copy in your VM, and we'll reference these test IDs as we go through the week. It's really good. Again, if you're in the position of hiring pen testers, right, and you're wondering, am I getting good value for my pen test? Seeing that they're following stuff like this is one indication of that, right? And my last company, so I've been independent for over 11 years now. So in 2008, I left my last full-time job. I was the HIPAA security officer and the manager of network and security engineering for the second largest healthcare provider in New England, right? So they were owned by the Catholic Church of Boston at the time, the Archdiocese of Boston. They've since been taken for profit after I left. But it was 12,000 employees, 18,000 node WAN, 3-state WAN, and my company would hire pen testers. And my company, internal audit, would hire pen testers without speaking to me first. They would just hire a random pen tester, right? And they don't realize I myself am a professional pen tester. And that role was not a pen testing role, but I've been doing pen tests since the mid-90s, as I said. I was still doing them on the side as a side gig for extra cash kind of a thing, right? So I had some company roll in and do a pen test, and it was just completely awful. And I would call them out mercilessly on that stuff. I would just call them out, right? Oh, here's a pro tip for hiring a pen tester. When the company comes in, they'll often wheel in a senior pen tester. That senior pen tester is a sales engineer. They're not actually pen testing much anymore. They're selling, right? This is Eric Conrad, well-known pen tester. He'll be working on your account. These are weasel words, by the way. These are weasel words, right? And you hire the pen tester thinking, I'm doing the pen test. No, there's 2 kids out of college doing the pen test. And then the senior overlooks that test, kind of gives it a blessing. That's very common, right? So here's what you say. When you hire any pen testing company, you ask this question. Who's working on my pen test? I want to see their resumes. And what rough percentage of time will they spend? I know it's fluid. I know it's going to change. You may say 40% ends up being 30% for Joe or Susan or Steve. That's fine. But I want to see their resumes. And what percentage of time, roughly, will each spend? You just got yourself a much better pen test for free. You just upgraded your pen test for nothing, right? They checked. Now they're going to throw seniors at your account because they have to, because you called them out. That's the trick. They throw juniors at you, have a senior bless it. I want the senior working my pen test. If I'm paying $250 an hour, very common pen test rate, by the way, $250 US an hour, I want a top-notch pen test. I don't want the 23-year-old doing it. I want the senior doing it, right? So who's working my pen test? What percentage of time will they spend? You got yourself a better pen test for free, right? I tell all my clients to do that, right? So are they following a good methodology? It doesn't have to be OWASP, but something like that, Various categories now for information, identity, authentication. We'll call out these things all week long as we go. Again, so we follow this, but not slavishly, because we have a certain flow with labs and timing and whatnot. But overall, we find theirs is the best, the OTG.